The Joy in Goal Setting podcast is proud to be partnered with and brought to you by The Ideal Life. The Ideal Life offers a multimedia platform that is focused on cultivating a growth mindset. Here, you'll find a supportive community of coaches, valuable online resources, and transformative courses aimed at helping you lead a more gratifying and joyful life. Ready to take the next step in your personal growth journey? Visit theideallife.com to explore their wealth of resources and join their vibrant, growing community today. Welcome to the Joy in Goal Setting podcast, where we empower individuals to discover their purpose, achieve their goals, and experience a joyful life through encouraging conversations. I'm your host, Hudson Dodds. Today, we're sitting down with Adrianne Betz, a fashion designer, business owner, and a mother of 4. We discuss turning closed doors into opportunities, how to combat burnout, and finding joy outside of work. Adrianne, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, welcome to our new space.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love the new smell.
Yeah.
New house smell.
Yeah, it is, right? It's like what they used to put in like cabs, you know?
Yeah.
Like beach smell or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's a new year at the time of recording. I'm curious to hear from you either both of these questions or one or the other, but what's one thing you're really excited about in 2024?
Oh, gosh.
Or one thing that is like kind of making you nervous about 2024?
One thing I'm excited about is possibility. I feel like it's going to be a big year, but there's a big question mark. What is that going to look like? But I consider myself a pretty intuitive person, and this kind of happened to me back in 2019, and that ended up being a great year.
Awesome.
So I feel like empty book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So possibilities. Are there possibilities on the horizon you're thinking about, or you just feel like
so.
it's going to happen?
I'm leaving it open to whatever comes. But yeah, I think it's going to be great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so you're from Cape May, New Jersey.
I am.
The place I hear is great to visit, not to grow up in.
Well, I mean, I had like the typical childhood, but it was very small town. It was great to grow up near the beach, but unfortunately, being New Jersey, that is only functional like 3 months out of the year, and the rest of the year, it's just dead silence and cold and terrible weather. And yeah, I mean, everybody knew your business, and I had some great friends, small crew of friends, but yeah, I had bigger dreams than Cape May, so that's what took me to New York.
Awesome. So are you a beach person?
I am a beach person.
Like
So that was the only
okay.
hard thing about living in the city, was that I still had that pull and that hankering for the beach. So that's what I love about Charleston.
After Cape May, did you go straight to New York?
I did. So the minute I turned 18, well, I applied for schools in New York for college, and I got into FIT, and I was like, I'm going, see ya. And went to New York the minute, first semester, fall, and came home that first Christmas, and it was just eye-opening. And I was like, Mom, I'm not coming back. I'm sorry. And she's like, that's cool and all, but you need a job. Like, I'm not going to pay for your time. I'll pay for you while you're in school, during your semesters. But other than that, like, you want to do the summer, you want to do the winter, you need to have a job. So hit the streets, got myself a job, and never looked back. And I was there for about almost 12 years.
Was it always New York? And
always New York. Like, I did not think I was going to leave New York ever. Like, that was my dream.
When did you decide in Cape May growing up that New York was the spot?
I think the minute I got into wanting to do fashion, which was around like 12 years old, I realized, and coming from a family, like my mom was a school teacher, my dad worked for the city, that wasn't kind of like in my realm. So I had to do my own research of like, what was a fashion designer? What did that look like? And I've just always been the kid, no matter what, that I like set the bar very high, which could be a problem at times. But I went and outlined for myself on Google, like, what does that look like? And what's the best of the best? And so like, if I'm going to be in fashion, I want to go to the best schools. And so New York City was like the hub of fashion, right? Fashion Week and all the, women in the streets with their bags and their heels and all that. I wanted that. That was my dream. And from a very early age.
You mentioned that Cape May, in a lot of ways, is what, I don't want to say drove you away or drove you towards it, but it sounds like from an early age you fell in love with something that Cape May couldn't offer you.
Absolutely, yeah.
And many cities can't, for that matter, but the desire for fashion, what is that? Did you see that in your family? If Cape May wasn't offering you, I'm curious where that innate desire came from.
I was always I was always creative. I was always drawing, painting, that type of stuff, artist. But really, it was my grandmother that I would say, looking back now, that probably introduced me to that. And I lost her when I was 8. And so in a way, like part of my grief, I think, was tapping into the relationship that I did get with her that little bit of time. And looking back, she exposed me to all of that. Like, she would bring me into her bedroom and show me stuff in her closet and things that my grandfather brought back from like Vietnam for her, and her jewelry and all of that, and painting my nails. And then I don't know, I just kind of always was a girly girl. I was always into what I was putting on my body and stuff like that, and never really loved what was out in the market for myself. So being, the kid that drew and stuff, I'll start making things for myself, and I would start drawing, sketching ideas of clothing that I would want, and then kind of just let my imagination run wild with that. And probably by the time I was like 12 or 13, started like creating my own company in my head and what the name of that would be, and creating my logo and all of that stuff. So I think it definitely was out of their comfort zone for sure. And being the firstborn too, they were like, "You're going where?" I don't know if we can let that leash go that long. But they were pretty open for the most part. I think they were more scared of what does that mean? How are you going to take care of yourself? This seems like a career that maybe you won't make a lot of money at first in. And how can we raise you to be independent and provide for yourself and all that stuff, while also chasing this dream that I think, honestly, I think they thought was a little out of the ordinary and kind of.
So you land in
Pipe
New York.
dream.
You land in New York.
Yeah.
Go to school. Start working. Where was your first job in New York?
Very first job, or big girl job?
Let's do both.
Very first job. Well, I was interning. I interned a lot, and a lot of them were unpaid. And I did a lot of. Every season I would do behind the scenes fashion week. So I would dress the models and help wherever I was needed during the shows. And that was all unpaid. But my first paid, I guess, was a paid internship with a runway designer named David Rodriguez. And I would help him with pattern making and getting the fabric and all of that, running the streets. But I was so proud. He'd pay for my lunch and gave me my Metro card. And I was really hands-on with seeing everything that goes into a show. And then beyond that, I would say I worked retail for a little bit and got to really see the customer side of their purchasing and consumer and all that stuff. So got to see a lot of what makes up really the job itself.
Yeah. Was there ever a moment in New York that tested you? You were like, maybe this isn't
absolutely
what I wanted?
Yeah. I had a moment, I would say, my sophomore year, and it was the summer of my sophomore year. So like I said, I was not going home, and my mom was like, you need to find a job. And I couldn't find a job that summer. And it seemed like everywhere I asked, doors were just getting shut in my face left and right. I wasn't good enough. I mean, I even went to the TGI Fridays across the street and tried to apply to be a hostess, and they were like, no, girl. So, I had a lot of tears that summer of am I doing the wrong thing? Is it time for me to go home? Am I overextending myself? And then that's actually when I ended up with a retail job, but unfortunately I had to commute to New Jersey for that. So it was like, wow. Like if I'm a
In
real
the big
sign
city,
person.
but not in the big city?
Yeah. Nowhere in the city wanted to give me a chance. So my boyfriend at the time, now my husband, actually was living for his job in New Jersey, and we would commute to see each other anyway. So the one weekend when I was there seeing him, I was like, I'm just walking into the local mall and I'm going to get the first job that they offer because I just need money at this point. And I did, and it was for like Gymboree, like a kid's clothing brand, working as sales girl. And that's what I did that summer. And it like now that I see my story, like it definitely was working for me. But at the time I was like, what is this? What am I doing? Like I'm so much I felt better than that at the time. I was like, I have so much to offer, and the fact that I'm just here working like a cash register, I just felt like I was made for more. But now looking back, it was a teaching moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you go into Jamboree, you do your thing, you keep on going. When did you get your first big girl job, as you say?
The following summer, believe it or not. Full circle. And this blows my mind to this day. I went, and being so close to senior year, I was just stuck on the fact that I needed a real internship that was going to pay me hourly and that it was going to lead to something. And I was just applying for things left and right. And this one kept popping up, and they were emailing back and forth. And I'm like, even when I applied for it, I was like, I really don't want to work for this company, but I need a job. I've seen where I was the summer before. I can't, beggars can't be choosers, can't be picky. So they actually got back to me, and they wanted me to come in for the interview. And I even remember walking to the interview, and I called my boyfriend, now husband, and I was like, I don't want to go. Like, I really don't want to work for them. Like, should I? And he's like, just go. So I go. Anyway, long story short, that turns into a full-time job before I even graduated. So I was an assistant designer full-time my junior year and carrying my full-time credits in college. And so I worked for them for about 5 years before I left.
It took you a lot of chances,
yes.
A lot of tries to get there finally.
Yeah.
What kept you going? I mean, I'm thinking about coming from a small town, different than most people. Sounds like you had some support from family, but I don't know if it sounded like it wasn't maybe full support to a degree.
Right.
And you're getting shut down continuously. For a lot of people, they're like, maybe this isn't. Maybe someone's telling me that this is not right. Maybe I should try something different. What kept you going on the same dream, the same path?
Just really being in tune to myself and what was on my heart, and knowing that, well, I'm very driven, and when I'm faced with adversity, I want to prove people wrong. So I think more than anything, that probably was it. It was like, I'm not going to fail. I will do everything in my power not to fail. And I really had passion for what I was doing. So that's what kept me, and knowing that it was right for me, because I loved it, but I didn't understand why I wasn't being met, with the same chance, I guess, or whatever,
Well, and you mentioned that you weren't going to fail, although you were failing a lot.
No,
so I want to talk about that, though. I mean, we talk a lot about failure, and we talk a lot about, growth mindset and growing from failure. I'm curious, in that time frame, if you can think back on it, how did those failures either prepare you for much further on the road, or how did you look at those failures and learn from them to finally get the job or move forward?
Well, I think they truly humbled me, because if I wasn't failing, I think I definitely would have thought that more was for me. And when, just thinking back on that summer, if I wasn't humbled into just making money and just working, it's not going to be the fashion job you think it's going to be. You're going to be working sales. I think if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have been open to the next thing. And so that's kind of when it comes to that other job, the full-time job, was, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to take it. And I probably would have ignored the emails I had that failure of the summer.
Yeah.
So I wasn't it made me more open. And then it's kind of one of those things like, don't judge a book by its cover. And that was that job for me, is I was judging it. But when I got into it and I was around those people, I loved it. I didn't want to leave, like, you know, and it actually propelled my career.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
How long were you in New York for?
New York as a whole, we lived there for almost 12 years.
Long time.
Yes.
What brought you out of New York?
An opportunity for my husband's job. So that was kind of devastating because it was an opportunity we couldn't pass up. And I, like I said, with the other jobs, I was just excelling. I was getting promotion after promotion, opportunity after opportunity. He jokes I was the sugar mama. Like, I was doing well and I was proud, and I felt like I was on the cusp of like so much potential in my career. And but we both are like type A go-getters, and this was something that he was being presented with, and we had to move, and we had to move to Charleston. And oh my gosh, I went through like a midlife crisis with that. It was absolutely devastating. But I remember I had a mentor at my job at the time, good friend. I had actually worked with her at my first job, and she had brought me over to the next company that I was with, the last one I was at before leaving New York. And I just remember going to her and crying on her shoulder and was like, you won't believe where we're going. We're going to Charleston. Da, da, da. And she was like, grabbed me by the shoulders, and she's like, Adrianne, no, this is wonderful. Like, first of all, have you ever been to Charleston? And I was like, no, embarrassingly enough, no. She was like, oh my God, you're going to love it there. But on top of that, like, take this as an opportunity to truly find yourself. Like, with his situation, I financially didn't have to work. So it was a moment of like being able to truly find what I really wanted to do deep down inside. And so I looked at her like she was crazy at the time. I was like, Annie, what? Find myself. I have found myself in this
Look at all the success I've done. Look at all these things.
But truly, I mean, looking back too with the career in New York, it was rough. You know, I loved what I was doing, but it was a rat race and long nights. And I had some health issues that were popping up just because of the stress levels I was under. And so I think there was a little voice when she said that. But also at the same time, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to approach this, because how do I tell my family back home that, you know, I had just gotten married at the time. So it was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, because they were raising me to be this like independent girl. They wanted me to be able to like, I don't need no man, like all that stuff. And here I'm going to be like, yeah, I just got married, but guess what? Now we're moving. And like Charleston was never in their wheelhouse either. So you're going where and how far away? And wait,
leaving the city
you're not even going to
of.
work. So
Yeah.
now you're just going to become a housewife, you know, like type of thing. And so I also, like, the other side of me was like, how am I going to tell my family that this is what we're going to do? And, you know, they have, looking back, have been supportive, but they're always apprehensive, which I think any family member probably is, because they're really concerned about your well-being. But yeah, so that led us to Charleston. And from there, I took some freelancing gigs, which is like how I ended up at Abercrombie. And I got pregnant. So I also was using this as like, okay, I'm going to make our house. Like everything I couldn't do in the city because I was working long hours. Like he was the one cooking dinner for us. I was coming home. I was just like spent. And then I'd get up at 6 o'clock and go to work again. And it was just like this hamster wheel. And so I'm like, okay, Annie, maybe you're right. Like I'll be the one that like makes dinner, and I'll like step into my wifely role and whatever. And then we'll start a family. And I no sooner had my first son, and he was like 6 weeks old, and I was like, oh no, this is not for me at all. This is not for me. I can't sit still. Like I need to hit benchmarks for my own personal growth. And I tried blogging a little bit, and I'm like, how do people do this? Like, how do you get yourself out there? SEO, like all that tech stuff that like I can't figure out. And I think I was like shopping one night for my son and it was like when Instagram first started. So it was like, everybody knows Etsy, but people started bringing their brands over to Instagram. And I'm like, oh, yes, this is the stuff I want. Not the stuff that's like in the stores right now with the baseballs and the construction logos and the dinosaurs. This is the stuff that I want for my son. So I was like buying it. And then one night when I was up with him, I'm sitting there and, feeding him. And I'm like, wait a minute, like light bulb. Why am I giving them my money when like I'm very much qualified to do what they're doing? Like they're just moms that are, and I don't know their background, so I can't speak to it, but
your background, which means that you can do the same thing or better.
What it looked like to me is like, well, heck, like I can do this. Like, why not just see what happens? And that's kind of like how everything started for me, for the business. I sat with it for a few more days, the idea of it, and kind of figured out in my head, okay, if I'm going to do this, what's it going to cost? And kind of a rough draft of a business plan. And one night after my husband came home from work, I'm like, all right, look, this is what I have in mind. This is what I want to do. I'm not doing anything anyways. And when he's napping, I think I'm going to start working on this. What do you think? And I like gave him some rough sketches of like a couple shirts and a couple pants for boys, little boys. And I was like, what do you think? And he was like, I think that's great. Go ahead. How much is it going to cost? And I was like, I told him the number and I was like, but it's my money from working freelancing. It's my money. So like won't cut into our bottom line or anything. And if I lose it, I lose it. Like, and yeah, the rest is history, honestly.
If you want to discover how the Ideal Life's founder, Mark Condon, quit smoking, shed 80 pounds, established a thriving logistics company, and embraced the challenges of becoming an Ironman triathlete, all thanks to the framework we referenced in today's episode, order your copy of his inspiring book, The Ideal Life, today with their website or any major retailer. Begin your journey towards a fulfilling life filled with purpose and achievement. I want to go back to New York because it's interesting to me how it's everything you ever wanted. And in some ways, it was proving all the people wrong, which was maybe not the main reason, but definitely a driving factor to continue applying and moving forward, all those things. And it sounds like, as amazing as it was, and it definitely set you up for exactly where you ended up in life and all those things, it wasn't providing you the joy you were maybe expecting, or especially looking back on it.
It really wasn't. Looking back, it was not filling my cup at all. Like what was filling my cup was I was successful and I was achieving things on paper and hitting all the marks. But when I went home at night and laid my head down, there was something missing. And is this it? And I really had a moment where I was like, is this what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? Type of thing. And so in a way, it was like a blessing in disguise that we had this opportunity to move down here because it forced me out of that. Like it literally chucked me out of the hamster wheel where I probably would have just kept going. And who knows? Like I said, I had some health issues that were coming up. And it's like, where would that have? I was like 27 or 8 when we left New York. And coming here, clearly this is a slower pace of life than New York City. So I had time to it all kind of came like a wave and compounded on me. And I'm like, wow, what the heck just happened? It just felt like a really fast life. And like I said, I moved there when I was 18 and here I am moving to Charleston at 28. So a matter of 10 years. And I felt like I had lived like 20 or 30 years because of how hard we were working. And it was never ending. And that's the only thing about New York that I don't think I was prepared for coming from such a small town as Cape May, is that it's never enough. And and then finally something has to give, whether it's you or, the job, or because that's the other thing is I got out right before the industry kind of crashed, the economy crashed. And what's the first thing to go is clothing. Like people aren't, so layoffs were happening and stuff. So who knows what the rest of my career would have looked like. I definitely probably think I would have been faced with some hard times. And then I'd rather the decision be that we had to move for an opportunity than it be we had to move out because we couldn't do it anymore,
Yeah.
Or even afford the city. So
reminds me, my wife went to school for early childhood education, and her dream was to run a preschool. And she was able she got that job and did it for 2 years. And it's a very similar story in that worked her tail off, beginning to end, came home, spent everything
Yeah.
doing what she wanted to do or thought she wanted to do. And it wasn't until realizing this isn't filling my cup. It's not allowing me to live the life and all the other things that I
Yes.
value. All my life roles are getting wiped away. I'm only focusing on one.
Yep.
And it's killing me that she finally got out. And she's doing something different and similar in education. But the point is, it makes me think about your story and how we have these 7 life roles of work and wealth and health and faith and family and community and these things. And we tend, especially in America, we tend to focus on work. And work is where we put our value and our worth often. And even when you have all these successes and it seems like everything's great, in reality, I don't want to speak for you, but it sounds like maybe health wasn't something you were really putting time and energy into, and I don't know about family or all these other things.
Really, I didn't have time for anything else. Yeah, but work. And that's the whole thing is I knew as much as I prioritized work, I knew that I also wanted a family and I wanted to travel and I wanted to be able to do these other things. And it was starting to, from getting married, I think it automatically puts in mind, okay, the bigger picture of like, well, where are we going to go from here? We're not just going to work for the rest of our lives and be like roommates. Like we want to have kids and we want to do all these other things. And I started thinking to myself, well, do I want to raise kids in New York City? And what does that look like? And if we don't raise them in New York City, then where do we move to? What suburb that's close enough for the commute? And then who's actually raising my kids? I'm going to have the kids, but then a nanny's going to raise my kids because I'm at work till 11 o'clock at night. And who's putting my kids to bed and all of that stuff. So in a way, everything happens for a reason, right? So it's kind of crazy.
It is. And I think, the life roles for us is such a big piece of the puzzle. We think about goals, and you set your goals and you reach your goals. I mean, you like you said, you're driven from an early age. You knew exactly what you wanted, and you learned from all your failures, and you achieved those goals. But I think oftentimes as a culture and society, and even parents in schools, we don't think about, but what are our goals for all these areas of our life? Because it's all who makes us human in all of these areas, not just work and not just family and not just whatever. Right. All of them make us who we are. And when we put focus and emphasis on one, that means we're not going to, we put continued focus. We talk about putting focus for a quarter, but for continued year after year focus, it gets left behind and we feel empty inside. And it sounds like you found some balance in Charleston after you moved and decided to launch the business. So let's talk a little bit about that. Yeah. Take me through the early stages and how that was, and were you able to find more balance, and what did that look like for you?
So it's like I said, it started with me running the idea through my husband, and then I hit the ground running pretty much. And during every nap time, and even when my son went to bed at night, I'd be in my office working, and I started my Instagram and started putting stuff on there, and people started purchasing. And so then I built my website and wanted to veer away from Etsy. So kind of it was left to my own devices to market myself. And one thing led to another. And to be completely honest with you, when I tell my story, the first year is a blur because it snowballed so quickly that I think I was in survival mode to a certain extent. And I started my business in December of 2013, filed and made it a real LLC by January 2014. And by March or April, it was completely out of control. Like I was doing a lot of the manufacturing myself. I was sewing everything, doing all the pattern work and all of that because I didn't think it would really, get off the ground that quickly. And by April, I found myself behind a sewing machine, bawling my eyes out, crying because my husband would be he's like, well, what are we going to do this weekend? And I'm like, well, I have 24 outstanding orders. And the lead time on my orders were like 2 weeks. And at this rate that I'm going, it's more like 6 or 8 weeks. And who the heck's buying anything for their child?
They're already they outsized, they're outgrown.
They've outgrown it. So he was really, really supportive in the fact that like he was like, okay, I'm gonna take Aiden. He was like only 6 months old at the time, but he was like, I'm gonna take Aiden to the aquarium and like whatever. And I remember that afternoon I was bawling and I was like, I'm missing out on
this was
family
not the point.
moments.
Right, you could be in New York still.
Right. Exactly. Like, what am I doing? What am I doing and what is it worth? I'm missing time with my son. Again, my firstborn. Like, this is everything I've wanted. Something's got to give. So, me being me, went into my Rolodex. I'm like, I know people. Like, let's start contacting people. So I started shooting out emails. Because in my career previously in New York, I did a lot of traveling. So I knew a lot of manufacturers and industry people that did all of this. So I'm like, let's just see if they'll like help me out here. And again, I got a lot of doors closed in my face because I couldn't meet certain minutes. Because while my business was growing substantially, it still was not meeting these thousands of, units that these people wanted in order to even, start cutting fabric for me. But I found somebody because I was persistent and I found somebody out in LA and I took him on and raised my price a little bit, my retail, and in order to account for him and started finding balance that way. So that's when I really realized that if I'm going to do this, I need to outsource, work smarter, not harder, And so from there, by the following year, I ended up with a publicist. I had celebrities' kids wearing my clothing. The following year, I guess it was, or maybe a couple years after that, but I started blogging actually in 2015 at the recommendation of my publicist because, again, it was at the forefront of this. I don't know what they call this movement of people starting their own, this small business thing of social media going hand in hand with that. She was like, people want to make that connection with small business. They want to know this story. They want to know, they want that connection. So she encouraged me to start a blog, and I had found out that I was pregnant with my second son, Hudson, and they were like, we want to see your nursery. We want to see what baby products you're purchasing for him and all of that stuff. And that's what really built my audience.
Influencer lifestyle blog that didn't exist back
and
in the day.
I didn't even know what I was doing.
It is now, but it wasn't at the time.
I just wanted them to buy my kids' clothing. Like, I didn't realize what I was doing. I just thought I was giving them a glimpse into us. And then
became a brand on accident.
Yes. And that's what's so bizarre when I do talk about the story is, like, I don't really understand how this all it kind of happened to me, but we're doing it, But I had him, and then the focus started shifting to, how are you doing this? Like, your brand didn't miss a beat. The clothing brand didn't miss a beat. You're still shipping on time. You're still doing all this stuff. And it seems like it's growing even more with media attention. But you have 2 under 2 at home. Girl, how are you doing? Like, we need to know. And so I guess I started doing blog posts on that stuff, that type of stuff of how I was juggling it all, because it kind of opened up a thing for other people to be like, you can still pursue your dreams or pursue your passion projects while raising your kids at home. That you don't have to do an MLM. Like, you can, you know what I mean? Like, you can whatever you put your heart to, you can do it with your kids, and why not bring them along for the ride? Yeah. So, that's what we did. And the brand kind of grew through word of mouth. Again, celebrities, through my publicist, my celebrities were wearing the brand, so that brought a lot of like attention to the brand and to my Instagram account. And then I randomly one day got an email from Joanna Gaines's team to bring my brand to her silos. It was the first time they opened up the silos, and they were doing like some sort of fair, fall fair, I think, fall at the silos. And they recognized, and I was like, wait.
It's a whole new level now.
So like I went to I'm like, did you do any? And she was like, no, I didn't. And that's when I realized that like things spread like wildfire. And so I ended up going there about 4 times, and was then getting to see firsthand, because it's so hard to do it behind, the computer. You're not meeting your customer in real life. You're just shipping things, and people are saying what they say on social media, but you're not really getting to meet your customer and see who's wearing your clothing. And that was like the first time that I got to
interact with humans.
From across the country. They were coming in, and they would come and they were like, you don't understand, my oldest wore your stuff, and now my third born's wearing your stuff, and the quality's so great, and this, and I was getting the feedback firsthand, and it just was like mind blowing for me.
And super rewarding, I'm imagining. Very
Definitely.
different than New York, and that's probably a big difference to a degree.
Right. And of course, like I said, having my 2 boys, I was facing a little bit of burnout too, because I'm like, oh my gosh, sometimes I just want to be a mom. And when you're your own business and your own boss, when does it stop? It never stops. At least when you're in an office and you go home, you can leave it at the door, or you try to. But when you're your own boss, you feel like every little moment is wasted. I could be doing this. I could be doing that. Yes. So I was starting to feel a little bit of burnout, but I knew that I was lucky in the sense that I wasn't doing what I was doing in New York. So I still am in control. I'm the one in control. But I had to have a come to Jesus moment for sure of it's okay to throttle down sometimes.
Yeah.
It's
What
okay.
kind of did you put guardrails up for yourself, or how'd you help yourself from continuing into burnout? It sounds like you were able to recognize it easier and better than when you were in New York. Probably because you have kids, you can see burnout happening in real life. But how did you put up some guardrails? Did you and your husband talk? Do you have a mentor or a coach? What did you do to help yourself to not continue down that path, or to stay inside your lanes?
My husband and I were very close, so he definitely, I would say, kind of operated like a mentor for me. So I'd always run things through him, and he's always a fixer. So he's like, well, let's hire people. So he actually put out a call for interns the one summer, and I had high school girls in the neighborhood that came in and helped me. College girls from SCAD came in to help me. I hired virtual assistants to help me on the social media side and the blogging side, just to free up time to do what I really wanted to do, which was design. Because all of the nitty-gritty and behind the scenes to just keep the business running was not my cup of tea.
It has to happen, but not what you want to do.
Exactly. It was not my cup of tea. I wanted the creative side and not the other side. So that's kind of what I did. And then the pandemic happened. So unfortunately, that was a hard stop because people were not buying clothing. Yeah. And the clothing side of it kind of fell by the wayside. But I always say for this part in my story is the pendulum swung. So here I was not realizing it, but I was building a second business, the blogging, the influencing, the creating. And that's what then took the stage during, 2020 and to today was our family became the brand. It was no longer about the clothing. That's what started it, but now it's the family, and obviously our family grew. So I had a third son, and then surprise, surprise, the ending, happy ending, my daughter. And so now I'm a mom of 4, and it's I can't juggle all these balls. Something's got to give. And so in a way, that's why when we were speaking beforehand about the divine intervention, it's almost well, here we go. Could I have still kept running my business with the product base, but you need to really be super present for that? Or now I'm creating content for brands, big brands that I've used my entire life, and that's super easy. And I can still be here and present for my 4 kids when they need me. So what really sticks out for me, I read a book actually by Joanna Gaines a couple years ago, and her story is kind of eerily similar in the fact that she had her children and she had her little store, and she had to close the door on the store because her 4 kids needed her. And she kind of had a little voice that was don't worry, there's bigger plans after this. Just be a mom, be present for your kids. And she was. And then knock, 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 she was blogging, and somebody, HGTV, was like, hey, let's do a pilot for this show. And we all know where she ended up. So I think about that often, is that my biggest opportunities and my what I look as my biggest successes were during times of stillness, where I just let whatever come to me and figure it out that way, instead of like trying to actively push up this hill and pursue and pursue and pursue, and then kind of it's harder, you know.
Well, I think that's, to me, that's a huge, I don't know, a lesson for a lot of us, is that all the doors closing, which you live in New York, was a door closing to fashion for a lot of, in many ways, in basically every way.
Yes.
And the pandemic happening is a door closing in every way for your business that you started and your baby and all those kind of, not real baby, but business baby.
Yes, it was my first baby, second baby.
Yeah, right? But
Aiden came first, I guess.
But if you look at those as opportunities and stillness versus why this is happening to me, what I worked so hard for this, what am I going to do now? And
Right.
there's two ways to look at that. And you've chosen to look at them as opportunities, which is not always normal, by the way.
I've had my moments. I do.
Sure.
Yeah.
But you've used those as opportunities. And you know, we talk about growth mindset, as we said before, and you could say you can grow through failure, but you also grow through these seemingly bad opportunities, and you've grown into a new version of yourself, a version that's probably closer to the version of the person that you want to be. New York was in some ways taking you away, and probably even running the business is the clothing, even though it sounded like it was going well, it eventually was going to probably run you
Well, it's funny
sideways.
because I actually had the same thought with both of them, and it was, is this what I'm going to have to keep doing forever? So while I really enjoyed the clothing brand and starting something from scratch and watching it grow, I did have my thoughts in the slug of it. Oh my God, I have to keep coming up with collections. I have to keep the people excited and wanting them to keep purchasing and whatever. And it was like, okay, here we go again.
Yeah, is this what I want? And and it's so interesting with our framework. The beauty of it is, I think, in goal setting, and you've, like we said, you reach your goals. Like, there's no question about that. Is that oftentimes our goals are too nearsighted, even if they're 15 years away. Because then when you do them and you get there, you're like, is this it? Is this the goal that I wanted? Did I reach it? Because I did. Now what? Versus saying, well, what if when I die, what do I want my work legacy to be? So then when you reach those little moments, even they're 5 years or 10 years away, it's not like, oh gosh, what do I do now? It's like, well, this is one step to the greater picture.
Right.
And that greater picture changes for us always. But having that picture allows for it. It sounds like you've been grounded enough to be able to, and fortunate enough, I'm sure you'd say the same, to have these pivots and they continue to help you grow into the person you want to be. What we want to do is, like, you know, talk through how to help folks in all areas, not just work, but say, okay, well, is this helping me be the person I want to be? And if not, why? And what do I need to do to correct that path? Which sounds like you and your husband have had a good enough relationship to where you can have those conversations or allow for those moments to happen, to bring back to, I don't know, center. Like you said, pendulum. It makes me think of swinging back to the middle almost of staying on the path. Because we always swing. We're going to always swing.
Exactly.
In life. But having folks around, having opportunities to come back to the middle. But if we don't know where the middle is, we can't hit the middle.
Right. That's true, yeah.
And it sounds like you, whether it's on paper or you've thought about it fully, it sounds like you do know the person you want to be, whether it's as a mom or as a spouse or as a sister or daughter or whatever, as an employee or as a business owner or whatever. You know what you want to be, even though sometimes it sounds like it's happened serendipitously or, you know, with divine intervention.
Yeah.
And so the brand's now you and the fam, to a degree.
Yeah. So another interesting thing is that what I always saw back then at 12 years old, designing what I thought was my brand, I always saw myself as a mom too. So I wanted the house with the kids, and I wanted to work from home. I didn't want to go to an office, and wanted them close with me. And really, another goal achieved in my mind is the fact that I've taken them with me through all of this. So the clothing brand was started because of my son, Aiden, and then our family grew, and through it all, they've been with me for the ride the entire way. And so as long as that continues, I'm happy. Like, I'm achieving my personal goals, whatever that ends up looking like in the future, couple years from now, because who knows? Obviously, what I do is social media based at this point in time. Social media can change. Do I no longer have? I don't know. I could no longer be relevant. But as long as, they're with me through it all, I'm good.
Yeah. And you said you love to travel with the family.
Love traveling with the family, yes. So we did a lot of it pre-pandemic with our 2 boys, and then we got back into it last year, and we're hoping this year we're going to do more of it. So,
what does it look like for you and your family to travel together? Are y'all like adventurers when you go? Do you mix in relaxation? What kind of travelers are y'all?
Oh, well, a little bit of both. So we always kind of have some agenda of things to achieve, but then we love to just take in. I don't really like to over plan my travel or vacations. It doesn't really feel like a vacation with kids, right? You're just kind of living elsewhere. But yeah, we don't plan our days or anything. We like to explore and all that stuff. But yeah.
And do your kids enjoy traveling?
They love traveling. Yeah. They've all gotten bitten by the bug. My daughter especially is like, when are we going to the next hotel? She's like 4 and she's like packing her bags when she plays. And she's like, I'm going to a hotel tonight. Like, okay.
That's
all right.
Awesome and scary at the same time.
It is scary. I know we're creating a monster.
Where's been your favorite place so far to travel with your family?
So we did Spain and Iceland this past summer, and we are hit hard by Spain. We're
going to be in Madrid in the end of March.
Oh, I am jealous. Yeah. Madrid's our favorite. If we could live in Madrid, we'd live there one day.
Same way. I've been to Barcelona. Madrid to me is the most European Madrid city. It sounds ridiculous. European Spanish city. Yeah. Makes me feel like other European places, which I love.
And it's funny because the minute we landed in Madrid, I'm like, she's back. I love that city life, but awesome. Madrid is so amazing because you can hit up Valencia within an hour, and it's just and the people and the food, all the things. And my kids absolutely adored it. So if we ever got an opportunity to live abroad, I think we definitely would take it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. But Iceland was pretty cool too.
No, it's on the list. Our family loves to explore with a hike. We do hikes.
Oh,
wherever
yeah.
we go.
Iceland's perfect for that.
Walking. Yeah. I love cultures and cities. So I love both, of course. But we find with our aged kids, it's easy to be like, plan a hike and then chill.
Right.
Because then we're being active and we're conquering something together as a family.
And then they get tired and they're a little more zen.
Right. So now I'm like, all right, how do we find time to hike in Madrid around, plan a little path to conquer to get somewhere. But no, I'm excited for it. I'm glad that your kids love traveling. It's a big part of my wife and our life as well. And I can't imagine not doing it with my kids. Like you said, bringing them along. And it is hard. It's super hard.
For sure, yeah. And I think we've done it so much now that I don't focus on the hard parts anymore. It is what it is. I just feel like they're going to act the way they're going to act, regardless if we're home or traveling.
Or somewhere else.
So I'd rather be in Madrid, and deal with their crap there than, at home. But
yeah. Well, right, exactly. And whether they're there or here, they're not going to be better there. I think so many people in their minds are like, oh, when we travel, it's our best behavior. It's like, well, it's the opposite of life.
Well, and you realize, how do we act as adults when we travel? So if it was just me and my husband, we'd probably be at each other's throats a little bit too, because travel's stressful. Yeah. So how could we expect our kids to be perfect?
You can't.
They're not going to. They're gonna be a little tense. But
so do any of your children have a knack for fashion, a love for fashion?
I think my daughter does. Yeah, and then it's funny, my son, Hudson, my second born, he's a big soccer guy, but that boy knows how to dress.
Well, then he fits in the soccer culture in Europe. I think he's right in there.
Exactly. He loves his shoes and all his kits and stuff. So, yeah, I think he got bit by the fashion bug, too.
That's a trip.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for your time today.
Of course.
It's been a joy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.